She walked into the first-class cabin wearing a simple ivory linen dress and modest flats, immediately met with scrutinizing stares and harsh whispers. They mocked her appearance and forced her to leave, certain that she didn't belong in the world of wealthy patrons around her. But little did they know, this unassuming woman they had just humiliated was the wife of the billionaire who owned the entire airline, and soon enough they would pay a steep price for their mistake. Amidst the bustling crowd, Rachel Carter appeared quietly, blending in effortlessly. She was a black woman with a slender frame, her natural curly hair loosely tied behind her, highlighting a gentle face with deep brown eyes. Rachel wore a simple ivory linen dress and modest flats, a stark contrast to the luxurious, extravagant outfits around her. On her wrist was an old silver bracelet, a keepsake from her grandmother who always reminded her that a person's worth is never judged by their appearance. Rachel gently pulled her worn backpack containing a laptop, her favorite novel, and a few simple personal items. No designer luggage, no shiny suitcases, and no entourage of assistants. Rachel blended into the crowd with such natural ease that no one noticed her presence. This anonymity made her feel at ease. In the flashy, loud world that she and her husband inhabited, sometimes being unseen was a precious gift. Perhaps none of the thousands of people rushing through the airport knew that the simple woman they just brushed past was the wife of Ethan Carter, a tech billionaire, the black man who owned the renowned airline, Ether Air. And perhaps no one could ever imagine that this quiet, unassuming woman was the largest shareholder, holding 40% of the company, and the very person who had helped shape the airline's customer service policies and its anti-racism initiatives. But this morning, Rachel wasn't thinking about any of those big things. She simply wanted a peaceful, quiet trip, away from the unseen pressures that came with the special position she and her husband held. However, she couldn't have known that in just a few moments, her simplicity and humility would become the reason she would experience one of the most painful and memorable days of her life. A day when she would have to directly confront the harshest and deepest prejudice from the very place where she had put so much effort and passion into building. The Denver-Seattle flight of Ether Air that day was unlike any other. It was the fateful flight, the beginning of her journey to fight against racism and injustice, a bitter yet glorious battle that Rachel Carter never saw coming. Rachel's footsteps gently came to a stop in front of the first-class ticket check gate for the Ether Air flight from Denver to Seattle. She calmly raised her ticket and smiled warmly at the ticket agent, a young woman named Claire, with shining blonde hair and bright red lipstick. Claire's welcoming smile suddenly faltered when her eyes swept over Rachel's simple, even somewhat worn appearance. Claire furrowed her brows, her gaze lingering longer than usual on Rachel's modest linen dress, then drifting down to the slightly scuffed flats on her feet. The friendliness that had been there moments before quickly shifted to evident suspicion, and she glanced back at her computer screen, perhaps trying to double-check something. "Sorry, could you confirm your full name?" Claire asked, her voice polite but tinged with an unmistakable skepticism in her eyes. Rachel responded softly, her tone calm and composed. "Rachel Carter." Claire continued to eye Rachel with doubt, her blue eyes flashing with hesitation. The clicking of her keyboard grew more rapid, as if she were searching for any plausible reason to deny this woman's presence. At that moment, a cold, sharp male voice cut through the air from just behind Rachel. "Your seat is back there in economy class." Rachel turned her head slightly, just in time to spot a wealthy-looking white man standing not far from her. His navy suit was impeccably tailored, a gleaming Rolex watch on his wrist, and his graying hair combed meticulously, all adding to the arrogance that radiated from him. His eyes were cold, scrutinizing, as if Rachel's very presence here was illogical, unacceptable. Claire, upon hearing his remark, quickly suppressed a small smile at the corner of her lips, but Rachel noticed it. A brief moment of awkwardness flashed across the ticket agent's face as she tried to regain her professional composure. But every movement of Claire, every passing second, clearly reflected the judgment based solely on Rachel's appearance. Rachel stayed silent, not responding to the man's comment, but her heart tightened slightly. A heavy, uncomfortable feeling began to spread inside her, like an old wound that had never fully healed being inadvertently touched again. She had grown accustomed to these types of looks throughout her life. Looks full of prejudice, simply because of her skin color and humble appearance. But this time, the insult stung even more, because this was Ether Air, the airline she had poured so much effort and heart into building. After a moment of hurried typing, Claire let out a small sigh, as if she had found an explanation for her doubts, and reluctantly said, "Ms. Rachel Carter, Seat 2A, please proceed." Rachel nodded gently, taking her ticket back. She walked through the door, her small frame calm and proud, as though she had never heard the judgmental words. But deep inside her, those demeaning words and looks began to stir a strong undercurrent of emotion. What had seemed like light steps now felt heavier. She knew that this flight would not be an easy one, but she didn't expect that this was only the beginning. The Denver-Seattle flight today would mark a milestone in her life, one where Rachel would not only face ruthless prejudices but also have to fight fiercely against them to protect the values she had always believed in. As Rachel stepped into the first-class cabin of the Ether Air flight, the soft lights casting a serene glow over the luxurious leather seats and the faint scent of lavender in the air were meant to evoke a sense of relaxation. But the atmosphere froze the moment she appeared. Cold stares from the wealthy passengers fixated on Rachel, silently scrutinizing her with doubt and disdain. Before she could settle into Seat 2A, Rachel heard a sharp, cutting voice from across the aisle. It was Vanessa Reed, a white woman in her 40s, dressed in a tight, expensive silk dress, with a large gold necklace around her neck and a collection of glittering diamond bracelets on her wrist. Vanessa's gaze toward Rachel was filled with open contempt and clear prejudice. "Who let a country black person in here? She looks like she just walked out of the ghetto." The words rang out, challenging and piercing, causing all the passengers in the cabin to turn and stare at Rachel with a mixture of curiosity, amusement, and disdain. A few quiet chuckles started, growing quickly into loud, malicious laughter. A middle-aged white man sitting near Vanessa joined in. "She's probably pretending to be humble to attract attention. Pathetic." Immediately, a younger woman sitting next to him took out her phone and started filming Rachel, her face beaming with delight, whispering sarcastic comments as she filmed. Several other passengers quickly joined in the cruel game, taking pictures, laughing, and exchanging mocking remarks, as though Rachel wasn't a person, but simply a toy for their amusement. Amid the onslaught of taunts, Rachel remained silent. Her face was calm, her eyes not showing anger, but her hands, gently resting on her grandmother's silver bracelet, began to tremble. She felt her heart tighten with every painful throb. Memories of her difficult childhood resurfaced. Memories of being subjected to countless mocking stares and discriminatory words because she was a black girl growing up in a poor neighborhood. Vanessa noticed Rachel's calm expression, growing more frustrated at not receiving the reaction she had expected. She pursed her lips and spoke more sharply. "What's the point of pretending to be high class? Someone like her probably had to save for a year just to sit here once." Laughter erupted around her, encouraging Vanessa further. The laughter spread throughout the cabin, turning Rachel into the center of open ridicule and prejudice. No one stepped in to defend her. No one felt any sympathy. Everyone seemed lost in the excitement of this heartless spectacle. Rachel took a deep breath, trying to steady her breathing and keep the tears at bay. She knew that reacting with anger or frustration wouldn't help. She remained quietly in her seat, telling herself she would get through this, just as she had gotten through so many challenges in her life. But deep down, Rachel silently made a decision. This flight wouldn't end so easily. She wasn't just going to endure the painful waves of ridicule. She would make all the prejudiced people on this flight realize that they had made the biggest mistake of their lives by judging her based on her appearance and skin color. Rachel knew that sometimes silence is the beginning of the most powerful and profound resistance, one that those malicious individuals could never imagine. A tense silence enveloped the first-class cabin, as if all sounds had ceased following the prolonged, mocking laughter. Rachel sat still, gently resting her hand on the old novel, trying to calm the discomfort creeping in her chest. But just then, a figure in a flight attendant uniform appeared beside Rachel's seat, shattering the false calm and making the atmosphere feel even more suffocating than before. It was Miranda Kane, the head flight attendant on this flight. Miranda, in her 40s, had a sharp, cold face, her golden hair tightly pinned back, and she wore a navy blue blazer with the airline's shiny logo, exuding an air of authority and arrogance. Standing right behind Miranda were two younger colleagues, Tracy Wells, a brown-haired woman with a fake smile always plastered on her face, and Logan Pierce, a tall man with sharp features always wearing a scowl, as though constantly annoyed by the world around him. Miranda looked down at Rachel with icy blue eyes, her gaze filled with clear suspicion. One hand held a tablet, quickly scrolling through the passenger list, before her eyes scanned Rachel from head to toe. Miranda didn't bother hiding her disdain as she raised her voice, loud enough for all the first-class passengers to hear. "There's been a mistake. You can't possibly be a VIP guest. Your seat is 32C in economy class." Miranda's voice was authoritative, but laced with contempt. Her words pierced Rachel's heart like sharp needles, making her feel small and isolated in the midst of such opulence and coldness. The surrounding passengers quickly turned their heads, eager to witness what would unfold, their gazes filled with a mixture of curiosity and delight at the spectacle Miranda had just created. Rachel struggled to stay calm, gently handing her ticket to Miranda and speaking in a soft voice, doing her best not to let her inner trembling show. "Perhaps you should double-check. This is my ticket, seat 2A. I booked it well in advance." Miranda reluctantly took the ticket, glancing at it quickly before turning to Tracy and Logan, shaking her head with doubt. Tracy immediately crossed her arms, her eyes sharp and mirroring Miranda's, observing Rachel as she sneered. Logan stood behind, his arms crossed, his cold stare directed at Rachel like a clear threat. Miranda spoke again, this time louder, her voice filled with anger and clearly trying to escalate the situation. "I don't think so. Our system has confirmed it. This seat is reserved for a real VIP, not for someone like you." Her words caused the passengers around them to murmur again, some pulling out their phones to film, others looking at Rachel with reproach as if she had committed a serious offense. Rachel felt the heat rising in her face, but she kept her composure, repeating softly and patiently, "Could you please check again? I believe this is a misunderstanding. I'm sure I purchased a first-class ticket." At that moment, Logan, the tall man standing behind, took a step forward with a clear, threatening expression. He looked directly at Rachel, speaking each word slowly. "You have two choices. Either stand up and go to your economy seat, or I'll call security to handle this." Logan's threat rang through the cabin, freezing the entire space for a moment. Rachel knew that if she continued to argue, things would only escalate further. Despite the immense pain in her heart, she knew she had to choose the path with the least harm in the moment. Slowly, Rachel stood up and grabbed her worn backpack. She didn't say a word, didn't resist, and didn't let a single ounce of anger show. She walked past Miranda, Tracy, and Logan with grace, her posture calm but proud, as if the injustice she had just endured couldn't bring her down. But as Rachel passed through the door separating the first class from the economy section, she clearly heard Miranda's loud voice. "I can't believe it. What was she thinking, pretending to be a VIP like that? Doesn't she know her place?" The accompanying laughter from Tracy and Logan immediately followed, along with the approval of several nearby passengers as if they had just witnessed an entertaining spectacle. Rachel briefly closed her eyes, her fingers gripping the straps of her backpack so tightly her knuckles turned white. At that moment, her heart felt a deep, searing pain, the pain of having her dignity and self-worth trampled without mercy. She didn't respond. She knew that the truth would eventually come to light. But for now, Rachel just wanted to find a moment of peace in the midst of this chaos. Yet deep down, she also knew. Those who had insulted her today would have to pay a steep price for their wrongful actions. Because they couldn't possibly know, the woman they had just so deeply offended was the one who held the fate of Ether Air in her hands, the very airline they worked for. Rachel stepped through the door separating first class from economy, each step feeling as if she were walking on thin, fragile ice. The eyes of dozens of passengers immediately fixed on her, filled with scrutiny, disdain, and amusement, as if they were watching an entertaining spectacle. The space fell silent for a moment, quickly replaced by malicious whispers and contemptuous remarks. As Rachel passed the first row of seats in economy, a high-pitched, mocking voice clearly rang out, loud enough for everyone to hear. How dare she pretend to be in first class? What a shameless act! Rachel paused briefly, not needing to turn around to know that the voice came from a middle-aged woman wearing an expensive Chanel coat, her eyes cold, sharp, and proud. Beside her, an older man in a luxurious gray suit chuckled quietly, his attitude clearly one of agreement with the cruel comment. Rachel took a deep breath, her heart feeling squeezed by the venomous words, but she kept her face calm and resolute. She didn't respond, nor did she engage in any argument. Rachel knew well that in this suffocating, prejudiced space, any defense would be pointless. The only thing she could do now was maintain her self-respect and dignity, things no one could take away from her. She continued walking slowly but confidently, even though deep down, Rachel could feel the eyes of every passenger piercing her, like sharp needles from every direction. The people around her whispered incessantly, some deliberately raising their voices so Rachel could hear every word clearly. A young man sitting by the window, wearing expensive headphones, subtly raised his phone to film Rachel as she passed by, mumbling with delight. "First time I've ever seen someone pretend to be in first class and look so casual about it. Must be a real pro." Next to him, his young girlfriend, heavily made up with bright red lips, snickered quietly, casting Rachel a look of contempt, as if she had just witnessed a petty scam. A few rows ahead, a middle-aged man, probably a businessman, also didn't hesitate to make a sarcastic comment as Rachel passed. She should realize sooner that no matter what she does, someone like her can never change their roots. Such delusion. The harsh words, the icy glares, the contemptuous smiles surrounded Rachel, each step of hers becoming a painful and humiliating journey. Each passing second felt endless, as if she were walking through an invisible valley full of thorns, every step heavy and full of challenges. Rachel kept her eyes focused straight ahead, but in her heart, waves of pain and humiliation surged. She couldn't help but wonder why she had to endure such insults, especially on the very flight of the airline she had poured so much effort into building. Memories of her poor past, of the time she was discriminated against during her childhood, suddenly resurfaced more vividly than ever, as if old wounds were cruelly torn open again. At the back of the economy cabin, Tracy, a young flight attendant with a cold face and an unmistakable sneer, was waiting for Rachel. Tracy gave Rachel a look of disdain before pointing to the narrow seat 32C at the very end of the row, her voice dripping with contempt. "Here's your seat. Hope you're happy with the place that matches your real status." A small chuckle echoed from a few nearby passengers, as if they had just witnessed an entertaining comedy. Rachel didn't respond to Tracy, nor did she meet her gaze. She gently placed her backpack down on the seat and sat slowly, striving to maintain her proud posture as if nothing that had just happened could shake her. As soon as Rachel sat down, she realized she had become the center of attention for the entire economy cabin. Eyes from both sides of the aisle continually studied her with scrutinizing, mocking gazes. Some passengers whispered between themselves with biting words Rachel no longer wanted to hear. She opened her novel gently, but her hands still shook, and her heart twisted with pain. Just moments ago, Rachel had thought this flight would be peaceful, a time to unwind after days of hard work. But now, everything had completely unraveled. Not only had she been insulted and publicly humiliated, but she also had to face the heartbreaking reality that the world she was trying to change was still full of prejudice, venomous words, and horrific racism. Rachel took a light breath, trying to stop the tears that threatened to spill. But deep within her heart, she knew what had just transpired wouldn't end easily, and that she would not allow these malicious people to continue disregarding or trampling on her dignity and worth again. She knew this was just the beginning of a larger battle, and she would not back down. No matter what she faced, Rachel was determined to stand strong, never retreating in the face of these prejudiced people. As Rachel settled into the cramped seat of 32C, she gently opened her favorite book, hoping to find some comfort in the familiar pages. But before she could immerse herself in the words, she could feel the suffocating pressure of the atmosphere still hanging over her. The whispers continued around her, with condescending and judgmental eyes from the surrounding seats always on her, turning each moment in this space into a torment. Suddenly, loud laughter from the row just across the aisle snapped Rachel back to reality. She glanced up and immediately recognized the middle-aged couple sitting just a few steps away, Greg Vaughn, a well-known businessman in the area, and his wife Lisa, a blonde woman who was meticulously made up, holding her phone and filming Rachel. Lisa's face was filled with excitement, her lips painted bright red as she smiled in delight, and her bright green eyes gleamed with malice every time she looked at Rachel. "I told you, she's definitely a fraud. Look at her, she has no dignity whatsoever," Greg said loudly, his voice dripping with mockery, as if he were performing before an audience rather than sitting on an airplane. Lisa immediately chimed in by raising her phone again, clearly capturing every small movement Rachel made, all while speaking in a loud voice. "I can't believe it. Someone like her actually dares to pretend to be in first class. Where does she get the audacity?" Lisa's words rang clearly, intentionally for Rachel to hear, sparking a round of quiet giggles from the surrounding passengers. Encouraged by the positive reactions from the crowd, Lisa continued with even crueler remarks, filming as she spoke. "Look, everyone, Today, we're witnessing an actress trying to play a noblewoman on an airplane. Who would have thought someone like her would think she deserves to sit in first class? A group of young passengers nearby, seemingly on vacation, couldn't stop laughing, engaging eagerly in discussions about Rachel, clearly enjoying the mockery from Greg and Lisa. One of them, a young woman with red hair and a stylish dress, laughed mockingly and said loudly, "Someone like her probably got on a plane for the first time. This must be the first time she's ever seen what first class looks like." The laughter continued, overtaking the already uncomfortable atmosphere. Rachel tried to maintain her composure, her gaze returning to the pages of her book, though she could no longer read a single word. Her hand gripped the page tightly, her fingers trembling slightly, trying to suppress the overwhelming shame rising inside her. On the other side, Lisa continued to upload short video clips to social media, unapologetically adding racially charged captions, mocking Rachel mercilessly. In just a few minutes, the videos were widely shared, attracting hundreds of comments from strangers, each comment feeling like a sharp knife stabbing into Rachel's self-esteem. Rachel felt trapped in an endless storm. She wanted to speak out, to explain, to defend herself, but she knew any resistance would only make things worse. Rachel was all too familiar with prejudice from the past, but she had never felt it so sharply and painfully as she did now, when the very airline she and Ethan had worked so hard to build was the place where she was being openly and blatantly insulted. Tracy, a young flight attendant standing nearby, seemed to notice the situation but did nothing to stop the mocking or filming from Lisa and Greg. Instead, Tracy seemed to enjoy it, subtly smiling every time she passed by Rachel's row, as if savoring the pain Rachel was enduring. Another flight attendant, Logan, appeared in the economy cabin at that moment. He glanced at Rachel indifferently before turning to Tracy and speaking loudly with malice. "Looks like we were right to move her down here. It's much more fitting for her real place and status." The laughter from Logan and Tracy rang clearly, causing a few passengers nearby to laugh along. The atmosphere in the economy cabin grew increasingly stifling and venomous, as if Rachel had become the target of a public display, where everyone was free to throw the most hurtful words at her. Rachel struggled to maintain her calm, but the isolation and constant attacks made it feel suffocating. She felt like she was trapped in a crowd of vicious people, completely alone with no one standing up for her. The moments dragged on, painfully slow. Rachel felt each breath becoming more difficult, each heartbeat heavier as if it might shatter. She knew she was facing a bitter reality. Prejudice and racism still ran rampant in society, even in places she never expected. In the brief silence between the endless jeers, Rachel told herself she would not succumb to this pain. She understood that the fight against injustice was just beginning. Rachel knew that she wouldn't just endure in silence. She would make those who had hurt her today face the consequences of their malicious actions. Rachel tried to keep her gaze fixed on the pages of her book, but the cruel remarks continued to surround her like cold, sharp waves. The air in the cabin had thickened with malice, and Rachel could feel the judging eyes of the passengers directed at her. She tried to breathe steadily to manage the pain, but every breath became harder, as if her lungs were constricted by the suffocating shame. The sound of footsteps echoed down the aisle, and Rachel looked up just in time to see Tracy, the young flight attendant with cold eyes and a smile full of mockery, pushing the snack cart down the aisle. Tracy stopped right beside Rachel's row, but instead of being cordial like with the other passengers, she looked down at Rachel, clearly relishing the woman's discomfort. Tracy bent down and threw a worn-out blue blanket toward Rachel, the blanket hitting her shoulder before falling to the floor. A few passengers around them quietly chuckled at Tracy's rude gesture. The young attendant didn't hesitate to speak loudly with a sarcastic tone. I hope you're not expecting anything more than a pack of crackers here. Someone like you doesn't deserve anything more." The laughter from Logan, the tall male attendant who had been standing nearby, echoed through the cabin. Logan crossed his arms, smirking maliciously, his cold eyes constantly observing Rachel as if she were a trespasser who deserved punishment. Rachel silently bent down to pick up the blanket, her hand trembling slightly with each motion. Despite her best efforts to maintain composure, inside, Rachel could feel her self-respect slowly being crushed by the humiliation and pain she was forced to endure. It wasn't because she was weak, but because these people were irrationally and ruthlessly trampling on her dignity, right in the airline that she and Ethan had built with their hearts and minds. Miranda, the head flight attendant, had just descended from first class to check on the situation in the economy cabin. As she passed by Rachel's seat, she turned to Tracy and Logan, a small satisfied smile on her face as she saw Rachel shrinking beneath the ridicule. "Looks like she's finally figuring out her real place," Miranda said, loud enough for Rachel to hear clearly. "Next time, let's be more careful. Don't let people like her climb too high and cause trouble for us." Those words felt like sharp knives stabbing directly into Rachel's heart. She could feel her self-respect being trampled, each word, each condescending glance deepening the wound inside her. Throughout the rest of the flight, Rachel was continuously ignored during the drink and snack service. When she politely called for Tracy to ask for a glass of water, Tracy merely glanced at her coldly before turning away, pretending not to have heard. One nearby passenger even whispered mockingly, "Yeah, Tracy, just ignore her. Maybe this is the best lesson for people like her who try to pretend." The sense of isolation and humiliation from these people became more and more apparent to Rachel. Her silence now was no longer a choice. It had become a survival instinct. She knew that any reaction would only amuse these cruel people more. Greg and Lisa, the couple who had been filming Rachel from afar, continued their cruel entertainment, constantly posting videos of Rachel online, accompanied by hateful and racially charged comments. Rachel felt completely surrounded by malice from all sides, with no way out. A young man sitting in the row next to hers even asked Rachel with a tone full of contempt, "Come on, be honest. Don't you feel embarrassed being exposed like this? Next time, think twice before trying to fake being a noblewoman." The people around them burst into laughter again, as if they were watching a comedy show rather than witnessing a real person being humiliated and in pain. Rachel didn't answer, her gaze still fixed on the book in front of her. But the words on the page had become blurry, no longer clear. Her fingers gripped the edge of the book, trembling, as tears welled up in her eyes, but she fought to keep them from falling. Rachel knew that she had to be strong now, to endure and remember every face, every word that had hurt her today. She told herself that those who were causing this pain would surely pay for their actions. Rachel silently stored away every detail of what had happened today, from Miranda's cruel words to Tracy and Logan's mocking gestures, to the offensive videos that Greg and Lisa posted online. The painful moments on this flight seemed endless, with each second becoming a test of Rachel's endurance. But she knew that the humiliation and pain she had endured today would not be in vain. Deep within her heart, a fierce determination was beginning to form. The determination to fight for justice, not only for herself, but for all those who had suffered from the same injustice and discrimination she had experienced today. At last, the painful flight came to an end as the plane touched down on the runway at Seattle Airport, gently shaking before slowing down and coming to a complete stop. Rachel let out a long breath, as if trying to release some of the immense pressure that had built up throughout the journey. However, the moment the seatbelt sign went off, That sense of relief quickly evaporated, replaced by the same lingering gazes and whispers still directed at her. Rachel slowly stood up, carefully slinging her worn backpack over her shoulder, her legs still shaking from the emotional and physical strain that had been building for so long. She began walking with the crowd, moving toward the exit of the plane. But just as she was about to pass the door, she heard Miranda's familiar voice ring out behind her, one filled with unmistakable contempt, clearly intended for Rachel to hear one last time. "Next time, remember to take the bus. Don't bother the VIPs." The mocking laughter from Tracy and Logan followed immediately, as if to amplify the cruel remark. Rachel didn't turn around. She simply tightened her grip on the straps of her backpack and tried to maintain a calm face as she stepped off the plane. But deep inside, her heart still ached with each beat. The shame and humiliation gnawed at her, leaving behind invisible yet deep wounds. Once inside the airport, Rachel quickly realized that she was still the focus of attention for many other passengers. A few young people held up their phones toward her, whispering to each other with delighted looks and mocking smiles. She knew exactly why, but she tried her best to ignore it. She quickened her pace, hoping to escape the situation as quickly as possible. As Rachel moved toward the exit, she noticed Lisa, the blonde woman with red lips, finishing up posting a video she had filmed during the flight, accompanied by cruel and racially charged captions. "Unbelievable. A country black woman sneaks into first class to play the VIP role. What a joke." Within minutes of Lisa posting it, the video quickly racked up thousands of views, then tens of thousands, rapidly spreading through social media. Malicious comments poured in, each one like a sharp knife aimed at Rachel's self-worth. "People like that will never belong in first class. Looks like she's trying to change her life by pretending to be royalty." She probably never knew what a first-class seat even looks like. Rachel's phone began vibrating continuously with new message notifications, signaling the storm she was about to face. But she didn't have the strength to read any of the comments. She knew they would only make her heart ache more and break further. On the other side, Lisa was basking in the satisfaction of her newfound fame. She continuously monitored the view count and shares, giddy and excited by the overwhelming response from the online community to the video she had posted. Greg, Lisa's husband, couldn't stop laughing, patting his wife proudly on the back. "See? This world loves watching things like this. Looks like you've become a social media hero today?" Lisa laughed smugly, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction and malice. This is the best lesson for those who try to climb too high without knowing their real place. Other passengers on the flight began sharing the video, further spreading the wave of mockery aimed at Rachel. They didn't care that behind that short clip was a real person with dignity, feelings, and very real pain. To them, Rachel was simply a toy, a pastime to kill time and feel satisfaction at someone else's suffering. Rachel hurried through the baggage claim area, walking quickly toward the airport exit. The solitude of those moments made her feel as though the entire world had turned its back on her. And what was even more painful was that this humiliation had taken place on a flight of Ether Air, the very airline that she and Ethan had worked so hard to build. Rachel took a deep breath, stopping for a moment outside the airport lobby to collect her thoughts. She closed her eyes and told herself that she needed to be stronger than ever. As painful and humiliating as today had been, it wouldn't break her. Rachel knew she had to stand firm, not just for herself but for everyone else out there who had experienced the same kind of discrimination she had today. She opened her phone, not to read the negative comments, but instead quickly sent a short message to Ethan. "We need to talk urgently. Something serious has happened." After sending the message, Rachel stood still for a moment. She understood that the real battle was still ahead, and this time she was determined not to endure in silence anymore. Those who had hurt her, who had publicly insulted and degraded her unfairly, would pay a price for their actions, and Rachel was resolved that no matter how difficult it might be, she would not stop until justice was served clearly and decisively. The sky over Seattle the next morning was overcast and chilly, mirroring the heavy mood that hung over Ether Air's headquarters, the gleaming glass skyscraper standing tall in the heart of the city. The emergency meeting called by CEO Ethan Carter, an unusual move that left all employees and senior leaders uneasy, had everyone on edge. No one knew the exact reason for the meeting, but all could sense that something serious had occurred, something powerful enough to shake the reputation of the renowned airline. The large conference room on the top floor quickly filled with top executives and prominent flight attendants, all wearing expressions of curiosity mixed with concern. The three flight attendants, Miranda, Tracy, and Logan, sat in the front row, their attire immaculate, but their usual air of confidence seemed slightly strained today, though they still tried to hide their anxiety behind a mask of calm. Miranda, her blonde hair tightly pulled back, scanned the room with cold eyes, as if searching for clues as to why this sudden meeting had been called. Tracy whispered in Logan's ear, trying to keep her voice low but unable to hide her nervousness. "Do you think this is about the girl from yesterday?" Logan shrugged, his expression remaining neutral, but there was a flicker of unease in his cold blue eyes. Just then, the heavy oak door opened smoothly but decisively, and all eyes immediately turned toward the entrance. Ethan Carter walked into the room, his tall, authoritative figure casting a commanding presence. His familiar chiseled face now wore an unusually cold and serious expression. Ethan had always been a gentleman, calm and composed, but today, every gesture and step he took radiated undeniable gravity, making the tension in the room palpable. Following closely behind Ethan was Rachel Carter, small in stature, yet walking with unwavering confidence and strength. She wore the same simple white linen dress as the day before, her natural curls falling loosely around her shoulders. Her understated appearance was powerful in its own right. The unexpected appearance of Rachel took Miranda, Tracy, and Logan completely by surprise. Their faces went pale, their eyes widening with a mix of shock and fear. Miranda instinctively clenched her hands together, while Tracy turned to Logan in panic, but Logan remained frozen, his gaze locked on Rachel, a sense of unease flooding over them all. None of them had ever imagined that the woman they had mocked, ridiculed, and treated so poorly yesterday would be standing here beside the CEO of the very airline they worked for. Ethan walked to the podium, his stern gaze sweeping across the room. He paused for a moment, letting the tension sink in before speaking. "I believe everyone here is aware of the social media storm from yesterday. A passenger was severely insulted, discriminated against, and publicly humiliated on an Ether Air flight." Ethan paused again, turning his gaze directly to Miranda, Tracy, and Logan, his eyes as cold as ice. "What you don't know is that the person you insulted is my wife, Rachel Carter, co-founder of Ether Air, owner of 40% of the company, and the person who helped build the customer service standards you all have violated." The room immediately fell into a suffocating silence. No one dared to move or speak. Every eye in the room was now fixed on the three flight attendants sitting motionless in the front row. Miranda's hands trembled, her fingers instinctively clutching the edge of her vest, her face pale, her lips moving but unable to form any words. Tracy's face flushed red, her eyes wide with panic and fear, looking over to Logan as if pleading for help. But Logan remained still, his cold eyes betraying his own anxiety, showing the faintest signs of fear. Ethan continued, his voice cold and resolute, not allowing anyone a chance to explain. Rachel believes that simplicity and humility are the keys to connecting with our customers, understanding and respecting everyone, regardless of wealth or skin color. But yesterday, on a flight of our very own airline, Rachel was ruthlessly insulted by her own staff. Ethan's voice grew even more intense, each word like a sharp blade aimed directly at the flight attendants trembling below. You didn't just insult a passenger. You directly went against the core values that Ether Air has built over the years. This is unacceptable. Rachel stood beside Ethan, her expression calm, without a hint of resentment, yet filled with determination. She took a step forward and spoke softly but firmly. I didn't come here for revenge or to demand an apology, but I want everyone here to understand one thing. Discrimination and belittling someone based on their appearance or background is something Ether Air will never tolerate. We need to recognize this issue and change immediately. Her words rang out gently yet powerfully, persuasive and clear. The entire room fell into deep silence. Miranda lowered her head, her eyes filled with shame. Tracy trembled and began to cry, tears rolling down her cheeks. Logan, still trying to maintain his composure, couldn't hide the regret and fear in his eyes, realizing the consequences they were about to face. The truth about Rachel Carter's true identity had now been fully exposed, shaking the entire Ether Air Company. Those who had insulted her now realized the grave mistake they had made. They had unknowingly offended someone whose power and influence could easily reverse their lives forever. The heavy atmosphere still hung in the room after Ethan's cold declaration. Astonished and ashamed gazes were fixed on Rachel, the small woman standing next to the powerful CEO of Ether Air. Rachel looked over each person, her eyes serious but free of resentment. Instead, she exuded a sense of calm yet unwavering determination. As the room gradually quieted to the point where everyone could almost hear each other's breath, Rachel slowly stepped forward to the podium, directly facing the board of directors, senior leadership, and staff who were all focused on her. I know that today is a shock to many of you, Rachel began, her voice steady and clear. But I'm not here today to talk about myself. I'm here to talk about a much bigger issue, one that Ether Air is facing. She placed a neatly organized, thorough report on the table. This report, meticulously compiled by Rachel herself overnight, documented 27 cases of racial discrimination and injustice that had occurred on Ether Air flights, an airline that prided itself on its commitment to treating all passengers equally and fairly. In my hands is a detailed report on 27 cases of racial discrimination that have occurred in the past 6 months, Rachel said, her voice strong and firm despite its quiet volume. These passengers have been subjected to insults, mistreatment, and discrimination simply because of their skin color, background, or appearance, an absolute contradiction to the core values that Ether Air claims to uphold. Miranda, Tracy, and Logan sat motionless, their faces drained of color as if their strength had been drained. Miranda bowed her head, her hands trembling as she clutched them tightly, feeling deep shame and regret slowly sinking into her mind. Tracy hurriedly wiped away the tears rolling down her face, her frightened eyes avoiding the gazes of those around her. Logan, usually the picture of cold composure, now couldn't hide the visible confusion and anxiety on his face. Rachel continued, her gaze fixed directly on the board of directors, the most powerful people in the room. I'm not standing here to demand an apology for myself. I don't need compensation or any special treatment simply because I'm Ethan Carter's wife. What I need is justice, not just for me, but for all the passengers who have suffered from discrimination and degradation because of their skin color or appearance." The room fell into absolute silence, only Rachel's voice ringing out, full of confidence and authority. No one present could deny the gravity in every word Rachel spoke. The members of the board were all intently watching the report she had just presented, their faces slowly changing from surprise to clear shame and discomfort. "I demand that Ether Air change immediately," Rachel continued, her voice becoming sharper and more determined. "We cannot claim to be a top airline that values respect and equality while still allowing such shameful behavior to occur within our own ranks. What we need now is not to cover up or deny the issue, but to acknowledge it, face it, and resolve it thoroughly." A strong wave of agreement rippled through the room. An older member of the board stood first, looking directly at Rachel with admiration, his voice strong as he spoke. "I fully support Mrs. Carter's proposal. It's time for us to acknowledge our mistakes and take concrete actions to change." Others on the board also voiced their agreement. Another senior female director, her white hair contrasting with her sharp eyes, stood and said with determination, "Not only should we address the individuals involved, but I propose that Ether Air urgently establish a comprehensive campaign to educate and retrain all staff, from management to flight attendants, on awareness and behaviors regarding anti-racism." The room erupted into applause, a clear sign of approval. Rachel felt an immense sense of relief as she saw the strong and clear support from the most powerful people in the company. In the front row, Miranda, Tracy, and Logan sat in stunned silence, fully aware that their careers now faced an uncertain and bleak future. But what hurt them more was the bitter truth, that they had become the negative symbol of a much larger issue, one that Ether Air would have to confront and change from the root. The meeting concluded with a clear message. Ether Air would immediately begin a comprehensive revolution against racial discrimination, with Rachel taking the lead in directing this campaign. She not only had the full backing of the board of directors, but now she had full authority to implement the necessary and substantial changes. Rachel stepped down from the podium amid the respectful applause of everyone present. She felt relief, but she knew that this battle had just begun. Ether Air would change, and she would lead the difficult but meaningful fight to ensure that no passenger, regardless of skin color or background, would ever have to endure the injustice, pain, and humiliation she had experienced. And from this moment on, Rachel Carter was not just the wife of a powerful CEO, she had become a symbol of fairness, courage, and unwavering determination to fight against all forms of discrimination in society. Right after that shocking meeting, the headquarters of Ether Air was engulfed in a heavy atmosphere. News about Rachel Carter, co-founder of the airline and the wife of CEO Ethan Carter, being humiliated by her own employees quickly spread throughout the company like a massive storm. Whispers filled the halls and offices, and all eyes were on 3 flight attendants, Miranda, Tracy, and Logan, who had now become the center of outrage. Not long after, a clear and decisive internal announcement was sent out to all Ether Air employees, outlining strict disciplinary actions against the 3 flight attendants directly involved in the incident. Miranda Caney, the once arrogant head flight attendant who had always prided herself on her position and power, was now reassigned to the Customer Complaints Department, a role she had always looked down upon. Miranda couldn't believe her eyes when she received that notification. Her heart felt suffocated by shame and humiliation. Every day, she had to sit at a small desk, answering dozens of angry phone calls from passengers, continuously being scolded and berated for her racist behavior. Her once cold, authoritative voice now trembled and lacked confidence. She often had to listen to harsh criticisms. "People like you are what's wrong with this airline. I never want to fly with a racist airline." These insults cut into Miranda's self-esteem each day, slowly drowning her in disappointment and bitterness. She was no longer the proud head flight attendant, but just an ordinary employee facing the harsh consequences of her own attitude. At the same time, Tracy Wells, who had once mocked Rachel without a shred of compassion, was reassigned to direct service in the economy class, a position she had always considered beneath her, and now it was where she had to face passengers every day. She quickly understood what it felt like to be looked down upon as each passenger recognized her from the viral video circulating on social media. On every flight, Tracy felt the cold, dismissive treatment from passengers. Once, when she politely asked a passenger if she needed anything, the middle-aged woman coldly looked at her and replied mockingly, "I don't think you're qualified to serve me. Who knows if you look down on me like you did with others?" Those words felt like a slap to Tracy's self-worth, making her eyes well up with tears. She tried to hide her emotions, but the pride she once had was completely gone. Tracy no longer felt any pride or dignity when she wore the Ether Air uniform. Instead, every time she saw the airline's logo on her chest, she felt a deep sense of shame for her past actions. And Logan Pierce, the man who had once confidently stood next to Tracy, continuously delivering cruel, cold insults, now faced the harshest punishment. He was reassigned to work in the baggage area. From a dashing flight attendant proud of his good looks and important position, Logan now had to do manual labor, hauling luggage in the cold Seattle rain. Logan felt immense shame every time he encountered former colleagues, who now looked at him with pity mixed with contempt. One day, under a heavy downpour, Logan slipped and fell on the cold concrete while carrying a heavy suitcase. He looked up and met the cold gazes of the passengers waiting to collect their luggage. One of them recognized him and whispered just loud enough for Logan to hear, "He deserves this." That's the price for arrogance and discrimination. Each word stabbed at Logan's heart, and the rain mixed with his tears, running down his cold face. The arrogance he once carried quickly vanished, replaced by a deep, painful humiliation he could never erase. As the three of them faced severe punishment, outside, the wave of public outrage continued to rise. The racist videos were being shared more widely, and thousands of people were sharing and commenting in anger. Ether Air faced immense pressure from the public and had no choice but to publicly commit to a complete policy overhaul, retraining all employees and strictly addressing any future incidents of racial discrimination. Miranda, Tracy, and Logan were not only facing punishment from their superiors, but also enduring rejection and discrimination from their former colleagues. They realized that the mistake they made not only destroyed their careers, but also turned them into negative symbols in the eyes of everyone. As for Rachel, although she witnessed the punishment meted out to those who had wronged her, she didn't feel joy or satisfaction. Rachel understood that what happened to these three flight attendants wasn't just punishment but a deep lesson for everyone who still carried discriminatory and racist views. She gazed out the large window, where the Seattle sky was beginning to clear after the long rain. Rachel knew that this was only the first step in the long journey to eliminate the ugly biases from Ether Air. The anti-racism revolution she had started would not stop here. Rachel would continue pushing further until she was sure no one would ever have to endure the pain she once went through. While Ether Air's internal environment was shaken by the strict disciplinary actions against the three flight attendants, outside, a powerful wave of reactions from the online community surged stronger than ever. The videos mocking Rachel, initially posted by Lisa Vaughn to humiliate her, quickly went viral, gaining millions of views and shares. At first, Lisa was thrilled by the unexpected fame, proudly watching the video's view count grow and spread widely. But soon, the situation took a dramatic turn, as the public discovered the true identity of Rachel Carter, a modest, humble woman who is also a co-founder of Ether Air, a successful businesswoman with significant contributions to charity work and the fight for racial equality. The online community, which initially viewed the video as harmless fun, now felt enraged and betrayed upon realizing they had unknowingly supported such a vile act of discrimination. A wave of fierce criticism immediately erupted, targeting those responsible for creating and spreading the controversial video. Lisa Vaughn, once excited about her newfound fame, now faced a furious public backlash. Her social media accounts flooded with angry comments, harsh condemnations, and calls to hold her accountable. "It's shameful that you think mocking someone based on their appearance and skin color is fun. You deliberately spread racism on social media, and now you must answer for your actions." These comments kept coming, growing in number, as Lisa felt the world turn against her. At first, she tried to defend herself, claiming it was just a misunderstanding. But the pressure from the online community quickly overwhelmed her, leaving her in a state of panic and despair. Each day, Lisa faced thousands of hateful comments, cruel and furious words from every corner. Unable to withstand the pressure, Lisa ultimately made the bitter decision to delete her social media account. But even when her account vanished, the videos, images, and malicious comments she had posted remained, continuing to circulate as a stern reminder of the consequences of racism. Greg Vaughn, her husband, who had once proudly supported his wife's actions in posting videos mocking Rachel, now had to face an equally powerful wave of anger from the online community. His social media was soon flooded with criticism, forcing him to quickly post a public apology video. However, Greg's apology lacked sincerity, coming across as weak and reluctant. "I apologize for the unfortunate incident. It was a moment of impulsiveness and misunderstanding, and I didn't mean to hurt anyone." This feeble apology was quickly exposed by the online community, which strongly condemned it. Thousands of people left enraged comments, pointing out the insincerity and lack of genuine remorse in Greg's words. "Do you think a shallow apology like that is enough? Discrimination is never a joke. Both you and your wife must take full responsibility for intentionally humiliating someone just because they are different from you." Under mounting pressure, Greg sank into feelings of helplessness and despair. The reputation he had built over the years quickly crumbled, replaced by scorn and criticism from every direction. Despite his attempts to offer further explanations, all of them were swiftly rejected by the ongoing fury of public opinion. At the same time, the online community not only focused its attention on Lisa and Greg, but also deepened the discussion on racism in society. Many people shared Rachel's story along with powerful hashtags calling for an end to all forms of discrimination, such as #StopRacism, #Justice for Rachel, and #ChangeEtherAir. These hashtags quickly became trending topics on social media platforms, drawing widespread attention and support from around the world. In this wave, a short video of Rachel speaking at an internal Ether Air meeting was also released, further enraging the online community but also inspiring admiration for her strength, courage, and dignity. Many people expressed their strong support for Rachel, seeing her as a symbol of the fight for justice and equality. Rachel Carter is the role model of courage and self-respect that we all need to follow. She turned her own suffering into a driving force for positive change, we are always standing with her. While Rachel received countless messages of encouragement and support, those who had wronged her were left sinking in rejection, criticism, and intense opposition. The online community, with its power of unity and strong voice, had forced racists like Lisa and Greg to pay a heavy price for their wrongful actions. At this point, Rachel no longer felt alone or abandoned as she once did. On the contrary, she realized she had the support and solidarity of many others who were also determined to fight to eliminate prejudice and discrimination from society once and for all. And the revolution Rachel had started would not stop at Ether Air. It had spread throughout society, creating powerful waves and decisive movements aimed at uprooting the deep-seated discriminatory thoughts that still lingered. As the fierce backlash from the online community continued to echo, Ether Air no longer had the luxury of avoiding or delaying action. The shocking videos related to the racial discrimination and public humiliation of Rachel had forced the airline into a situation where it had no choice but to make pivotal changes. This was no longer just a matter of handling a PR crisis. It was an important opportunity for Ether Air to reevaluate itself, undergo a deep restructuring, and protect the core values of the company: respect and equality for all. Just days later, a special press conference was held at Ether Air's headquarters. Before a crowd of hundreds of journalists and media outlets, CEO Ethan Carter stood at the podium with a serious and solemn expression. He clearly and powerfully announced that Ether Air would immediately launch a comprehensive reform campaign called Respect Beyond Appearance. "This is the time for us to face our mistakes head-on," Ethan said with determination in his voice. Ether Air is committed to ensuring that no one, whether a passenger or an employee, will ever have to endure racial discrimination or unfair treatment again. We will make real changes starting today. The Respect Beyond Appearance campaign immediately received strong support from the public. A major part of the campaign was Ether Air's decision to retrain all staff, from flight attendants and ground crew to top management, with an in-depth training program focused on awareness and attitudes toward racism and societal biases. This was an unprecedented move in the aviation industry, showing Ether Air's serious commitment to correcting its mistakes. From the very beginning of the campaign, Rachel Carter, the once humble woman at the center of the story, was frequently featured on major media outlets. No longer seen as a victim of insult and harm, Rachel had become a powerful symbol, representing justice, equality, and self-respect. Every time she appeared, Rachel carried with her a profound message, gentle yet incredibly powerful, striking straight into the hearts of the public. We cannot change the world just by speaking. The world changes when each of us dares to stand up against injustice and prejudice and say, "This is wrong, and I will not be silent any longer." Every interview and public appearance by Rachel was quickly shared on social media, creating a powerful wave of support. Thousands of people sent letters, emails, and messages to Rachel, sharing personal stories of times they had experienced similar discrimination and expressing their deep gratitude for her courage and determination. Inside Ether Air, the Respect Beyond Appearance training program became the top priority. The retraining sessions were not just dry theoretical lectures, but also heartfelt, in-depth discussions, helping each employee reflect on themselves and understand the serious harm caused by discrimination in the workplace. Many employees, including those who had previously been indifferent, began to speak up, acknowledging their mistakes and committing to change. Tracy, Miranda, and Logan, the three individuals directly responsible for the unfortunate incident, also participated fully in the training program. They became the most vivid examples of the valuable lesson Ether Air wanted to convey. Tracy no longer avoided the gazes of her colleagues and passengers. Instead, she proactively shared the deep lessons she had learned from her own mistakes. Miranda, from her position in the customer complaints department, facing daily criticism and reproach, began to realize that her previous discriminatory attitude had caused this situation. Logan, now working in the physically demanding baggage area under the rain, had completely lost the arrogance he once carried. He now fully understood what it felt like to be looked down upon and despised. The powerful changes within Ether Air were quickly noticed by the online community. The hashtag supporting Ether Air's campaign grew rapidly, accompanied by sincere words of encouragement and support from social media users. Many shared that they had been deeply disappointed in Ether Air, but now they were willing to give the airline a second chance to prove they were serious about making things right. When Rachel stood before hundreds of Ether Air employees in a special talk, she spoke sincerely. "We are not perfect, and we cannot change the past. But we can absolutely build a better future if we learn from our mistakes. I believe in the power of forgiveness and compassion, but I also believe that justice and fairness must always come first." At the end of her speech, Rachel received a standing ovation. Many employees, including those who had once doubted her, now looked at Rachel with respect and admiration. Rachel had not only helped Ether Air navigate its most serious crisis in the company's history, but had also opened a new chapter, one in which respect, self-esteem, and equality truly became the core values, deeply ingrained in every action and word of every individual. Outside the window, the golden sunlight finally pierced through the gray clouds, shining brightly on the scene before Rachel. She knew that the journey to eradicate racial discrimination was long and challenging, but at least Ether Air had bravely taken its first meaningful steps, and she would always be the one leading the way, a living symbol of justice and self-respect, not just for Ether Air but for the larger society beyond. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye since Ether Air officially launched the Respect Beyond Appearance campaign. The training sessions, restructuring, and in-depth discussions gradually came to a close, but the spirit and new values of the airline continued to spread, creating a clear transformation within the company. Rachel Carter, the woman who had once endured harm and ridicule on her very own airline's flight, had now become a symbol of renewal and self-respect, not only at Ether Air, but also to the wider community. That morning, Rachel walked into Seattle Airport with a feeling that was completely different from the day she left in tears and humiliation. The golden sunlight poured through the tall glass windows, brightening the space inside the terminal. The sound of suitcase wheels rolling gently across the marble floor created a steady, comforting rhythm, and she felt a deep sense of peace in her heart as she blended into the busy crowd. As Rachel approached the check-in counter, she immediately noticed the look of respect and genuine joy from the ground staff, a young woman named Maya. Maya gently took Rachel's ticket and smiled warmly. "Welcome back to Ether Air, Mrs. Carter. We're so happy to have you on board today." Rachel smiled softly in return, her heart touched by the clear change in the way she was being treated. This time, there were no looks of doubt or scrutiny. Instead, there was sincerity, warmth, and deep respect. As she boarded the plane, Rachel paused for a moment at the entrance to the cabin. She was surprised to see Logan Pierce, the man who had once treated her coldly and dismissively, standing there to greet passengers. But this time, Logan's demeanor had completely changed. He stood upright, his gaze sincere and humble. Upon seeing Rachel, Logan immediately bowed his head slightly, speaking with genuine respect. "Hello, Mrs. Carter. I am truly glad and grateful that you've returned. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to change." Rachel felt the sincerity in Logan's words and gently replied with a compassionate smile. "Thank you, Logan. I believe we've all learned a great deal from what happened." She continued into the cabin, feeling lighthearted as she witnessed the entirely new atmosphere on this flight. The young, enthusiastic, and professional flight attendants were dedicated to assisting every passenger, regardless of appearance or background. Soon after Rachel settled into her seat, she noticed a young black woman in simple clothing, similar to what Rachel had worn before, walking into first class. The woman seemed a little nervous, perhaps unfamiliar with the luxury of this space. Immediately, a flight attendant approached her, gently helping her stow her luggage and guiding her attentively. "Please, feel free to sit comfortably. If you need anything, just let me know right away. Ether Air wants every passenger to feel welcome and respected." Rachel watched the moment with a full heart, moved by the powerful change that had taken place. There were no more judging eyes, no more discriminatory remarks, only sincerity, warmth, and a service mindset rooted in deep respect for everyone. Throughout the flight, Rachel occasionally looked around, gently absorbing the beautiful moments unfolding. Passengers chatted happily, and the staff was warm, attentive, and always ready to help, making Rachel realize that all the efforts and pain she had endured were completely worth it. Midway through the flight, Logan approached Rachel's seat. He bowed his head respectfully and quietly spoke. "I want to apologize once again for what I did. Witnessing the change today, I truly understand more than ever the mistakes I made." Rachel smiled softly in return, her gaze full of understanding. "The most important thing is that we've learned from our mistakes. I believe that from now on we will work together to build something better." Logan nodded slightly, his face showing a sense of relief and deep gratitude, as though he had finally found forgiveness and peace in his heart. When the plane landed at its destination, Rachel disembarked with a heart full of relief and happiness. The pain and hurt she had once endured had now become the driving force to change an entire system and the mindset of thousands of people. As she stepped off the plane, Rachel looked up at the vast blue sky, feeling the cool breeze gently brush against her face. A warm, gentle smile appeared on Rachel's lips as she realized that she had not only brought change to herself, but also to Ether Air, and beyond that, to society at large. Rachel's story was not just the story of a woman who had overcome injustice and prejudice, but also a clear testament to the power of courage, persistence, and human dignity. And from this moment on, every Ether Air flight would carry the message Rachel had always hoped to spread. Respect and equality are not just things we say. They are things we must do every day with all our hearts. If you believe that everyone, regardless of their skin color or background, deserves to be respected and treated fairly, please like, share this meaningful story, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to help spread this powerful message of humanity to everyone.